1998 through to 2018 by looking at the published scholarly literature. My name's Rachel Herbert and I work at VOSviewer as Senior Research Evaluation Manager, and I'm in the International Centre for the Study of Research, or ICSR. The ICSR is committed to the advancement of research evaluation across all fields of knowledge production. We work with the research community and draw on many interconnected disciplines, from bibliometrics and scientometrics to team science to science and technology studies, to develop, advise and share knowledge within, across and beyond these areas. Now, I've said something like that sentence quite a few times since the ICSR launched in June of this year, and that got me thinking. We're committed to the advancement of research evaluation, but how has the science and research behind that developed over time? And that's what we're going to look at in this video across a 20-year period. And to do that, I'm using VOSviewer and Scopus.
Firstly, I had to define the field as best I could, so I headed to Scopus. Scopus is Elsevier's abstracting and indexing database of scholarly literature, which contains 78 million publications from scientific journals, books, and conference proceedings. The database covers research from the fields of science, technology, medicine, and the social sciences and the arts and humanities. So I built a keyword search. This word cloud shows most of the terms that I used. In addition, I added in 3 key journals: Research Evaluation, Scientometrics, and Journal of Infometrics, all 3 essential to the fields of bibliometrics and research evaluation. After a lot of tweaking, which involved a precision and recall trade-off so that I included as many as possible of the publications I wanted and excluded as many as possible that I didn't, I settled on a search. You can find the final search in the supporting materials for this video. Publications were limited to those published between 1998 and 2018, and articles, reviews, conference proceedings and short surveys only. These are the 4 standard document types as coded by Scopus, which I believe reflect the literature that is typically peer-reviewed. That gave me 35,000 publications. I exported all of them, ensuring I got the title, abstract and publication year for each record. To map out my publications, I used the software VOSviewer, developed by the CWTS group at the University of Leiden. Taken from their website, VOSviewer is a software tool for constructing and visualizing bibliometric networks. In brief, VOSviewer processes the raw text, that is, the title and abstract from each publication I downloaded, using natural language processing, and extracts key noun phrases. Those phrases are then laid out in a 2D map according to the relationships with each other phrase, and the placement is based on the co-occurrence of terms. Those that appear in the same publications from my dataset appear close together on the map. That allows us to see the clusters of terms within our publications. Let's take a look. So here we go. We're looking at keywords from publications published between 1998 and 2000. 285 terms make an appearance here. Each of those terms have to have appeared in at least 10 individual publications to meet the threshold that I set up for these maps, and that's a consistent limit that applies to the maps that you're going to see. The colours highlight clusters of terms. Those are the most closely linked to each other, and we have 3. In orange, we have what I'm calling the research process. This includes the terms relating to techniques, processes and structures. In blue, we have a tightly knit little cluster, which I've called research productivity. Here we see terms such as survey, participation, productivity in a few iterations, as well as research evaluation. And then up at the top, we have the purple cluster. I'm calling this one indicators and datasets. There we see data objects such as the research article, as well as metrics, and datasets in databases, so Medline, Science Citation Index, and so on. A few terms appear on this map and are here to stay. That is, I can track them in every iteration of the maps. These include H-index, impact factor, patent, R&D, international collaboration, and Medline. So ultimately we have a field that covers datasets, data objects, research phenomena, and research topics. A few years on now, and there appears to be a bit of a divide forming in that blue research productivity cluster. Top right, there are a growing number of terms now that relate to medicine and health. They're still sitting close to the purple indicators and datasets cluster, and the term impact factor in particular has strong links. While the research productivity and evaluation terms are drawn towards the orange research process cluster. And again, we see the same in 2003 to 2005. What's also apparent by this point is how the orange research process cluster is growing. That group of terms has gotten busier, tighter, and includes a wider range of topics now. In this map, for example, the terms text mining and social network analysis appear for the first time. There are also more terms relating to webometrics, as well as industry and tech-related phrases. By 2004, the term research productivity has actually shifted into that orange cluster. It's right on the border, but looking at that blue cluster now, it's really focused on a specific set of research topics. So I'm now calling that cluster Applied Bibliometrics, Health and Medicine. In that group, the keywords include clinical trial, controlled trial, disease, treatment, patient, so on. I took a look at those papers and found a high number of bibliometric studies that were applied specifically to subject areas or journal groups in the health sciences. This cluster now reflects that activity. But why does this domain of science stand out? That I'm not sure about. Why health and medicine and not material sciences, for example? Are these research fields that are more familiar with a metrics culture? I just don't know. I've also relabeled that orange cluster. Research process just doesn't cover this topic anymore, given how much it's grown. Instead, it's science and technology studies and mapping. We can see terms relating to mapping, patents, technology, and on the fringes, of course, we have research productivity. And we have a new cluster of sorts, a scattering of yellow nodes showing us growing complexity in that purple indicators and datasets cluster. In particular, citation analysis is leading the formation of this cluster. I could have changed the clustering resolution on this map to exclude this cluster, given that there's a real lack of distinction between the yellow and purple nodes, but I'm intrigued to see where it goes. By 2004, by the way, the map has doubled in size in comparison to 1998. That is, there are now twice as many terms included in this map as there were in the 1998 to 2000 map. By 2006, we're already at 3 times the count of unique terms from the original 1998 to 2000 map. Open Access Journal and Open Access appear here for the first time. Meanwhile, there's no longer any sign of research productivity. I should take a moment to talk about these new appearances and these disappearances though. Firstly, the threshold on the publication set and terms that appear in the map help dictate appearances, of course. For example, the Budapest Open Access Initiative was published in 2000. I'm sure I can find open access in the published literature earlier than 2006, but this is the first point that they appeared enough in the literature to show up in my particular publication set. We can also consider that we're seeing an evolution of language. Research productivity itself has gone, but I can point you to productive author and productive country. Where we once had a holistic view of research productivity, it's now split by the different players. And now, check out that yellow cluster. By this point, it's much more well-formed and more distinct from the purple cluster. This cluster seems to mostly be about geographical and topical research performance analysis. In these years, we start to observe a change to the structure of the field. It's gradual, but you might notice that the purple cluster is capturing more and more of the mid-ground, and so the yellow geographical and topical research cluster is now capping this map. In addition, we have a new cluster, small but quite distinct. That's focused on research evaluation. I also want to draw your attention to the orange cluster here and how much that is formed around the term network. It's a broad term and is no doubt being used in a multitude of ways. We can zoom in to see that the strongest links are to structure, collaboration network, citation network, social network, as well as graph and node. These reflect a variety of different definitions and uses of the term network. More change again. That research evaluation cluster is gone. Where research productivity and then research evaluation bridge the orange and blue clusters on the left and right of the map, it's now indicators and datasets and the geographical research performance clusters that sit right between those two. In the past few years, a few new terms have appeared. Some reflect social media platforms that have found their way into research evaluation studies, such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Others reflect research phenomena, so altmetrics and closeness centrality. And we also see graphene appear for the first time. Graphene was effectively rediscovered in 2004-2005 and a new research front appeared. This was a goldmine for bibliometricians, a testbed for new research field analysis, a natural case study that rarely appears. So of course, a few years after the scholarly literature on the subject exploded in volume, the term appears in our maps looking at research evaluation. And there we are, we made it up to date, 2016 to 18. We're now at 8 times the size in terms of number of unique terms compared to 1998 to 2000, and we have a very different structure. The clusters are now forming a fairly evenly distributed circle. Geographical performance analysis has drawn away somewhat from indicators and datasets. Applied bibliometrics in the health and medical fields remain tightly interwoven with elements of the indicators and datasets cluster, especially around impact factor. And we see a host of new terms that have entered reflecting changing datasets, approaches, technology, and pressures on research. A good number of new terms relate to gender and gender in research specifically, so female researcher, male researcher, gender disparity, gender gap, and so on. And quite a few highlight advances in technologies, so we have cloud computing, 3D printing, augmented reality, electric vehicles even. And there are some new-ish platforms and players in the research evaluation landscape that have appeared here too. Google Scholar, Microsoft Academic, Plum Metrics, SciVal, CiteScore, Relative Citation Ratio. And for a quick recap, here's 1998 to 2000, and here's 2016 to 2018, a much busier map reflecting a lot of development. There are simply a lot more publications that touch on research evaluation and apply bibliometrics and their approaches by 2018. From the way it is done to what is evaluated, we see change. There are new datasets, new metrics, new technologies and bibliometric methods, new data objects, elements and players that are being evaluated, and the types of impact being considered have changed a great deal. There's a more global sense to this latest map, and ultimately for me, the field of research evaluation has become increasingly inclusive, but also outward-looking.
I really hope you've enjoyed coming on this journey with me. I found the process fascinating, from trying to define the field through to diving into those maps. I've made all the supporting materials available, so if you want to investigate the publication set, the keyword search, or use the maps yourselves, you can. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me at the email address on screen. I'd like to thank CWTS for making VOSviewer available freely for commercial and non-commercial use, and I urge you to check out icsr.net.